Losing Sunlight by Marvelyn Ponder. Chapter 1. As Sure as the Sunrise.
Okay, no, I am not buying it.
Even as she said it, Sunset Shimmer could barely keep the smile out of her voice. She gestured up with her free hand.
There's no way that thing got anywhere close to the moon without some kind of magic. That can't be possible.
The lunar module in question sat over a hyper-realistic photo of the moon's surface printed on the floor. Staged around it, two stuffed spacesuits posed like they were acting under a lower gravity, the first climbing down a ladder on the module, and his commander proudly proclaiming this spot of the museum floor for America. The cheesy lighting didn't help, lit from beneath as if to say, "Hey, look what we did. How many heavenly bodies have you landed on lately?" She was also sure that the bottom orangey gold part was spray-painted tin foil. Even still, the idea of real-life humans finding a way to the stars without any kind of magic whatsoever. Twilight took the bait with a knowing smile.
You think that's something? Wait until I show you the rocket that flew up there.
She pointed to the sky, or rather the planetarium held up by fishing wire.
This is just the craft they use to gather lunar materials from the surface. The command module is much more space-worthy, trust me. So this isn't just a model? This really landed on the moon? The moon?
Sunset's girlfriend nodded at her side, positively beaming. Looking back at the module, her eyes went about as wide as they could get.
Wow,
she breathed. It was as if she'd teleported from muggy August day in the city to the up top of Mount Everhoof, drinking in enough Arctic air to refrigerate her insides.
The physics, the engineering, the mechanics. Twilight, this is so amazing. How did they do it?
True to her name, Twilight's eyes sparkled.
A part of me was hoping you'd ask.
And thus began another lengthy but highly educational history lesson. It left Sunset entranced, totally and completely deaf to the din of all the bustling patrons around them. She never used to be one for history, mostly because back in Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns, a history lesson consisted of her facing off against a dusty, old book. Not really her style. Listening to her girlfriend dork out about the greatest feats mankind ever had to offer, on the other hand, breathtaking, for obvious reasons. It's why their past few dates added up to a near-complete tour of the Canterlot Cosmopolitan Museum. They couldn't walk from one end to the other in a day, even if they booked it past all the exhibits marathon style. So instead, they divided up by section. A new date, a new era, and a new bow tie on her girlfriend that usually matched whatever the topic the discussion would be. Today's had little stars and planets. With Twilight finishing up, Sunset whistled.
I've got to admit, I'm impressed. You really know your stuff.
Twilight blushed, and her smile spread a bit further.
Although it must be pretty hard to forget. This world's history is seriously unbelievable.
Twilight snorted like a hog.
Right. Says the magical unicorn from a dimension where an immortal princess banished her sister to the moon for 1,000 years.
Sunset cracked an open grin.
Yeah, exactly. A real snooze fest.
Twilight shoved her with her shoulder as they moved on from the lunar lander's velvet rope. They walked slow together, like they would if they were walking on the shores of a beach and enjoying the feeling of water washing over their feet, arms swinging. Twilight's eyes roved over the floor as they went.
Well, it might still be fantastic to you, but this is your history now, too. You've been here long enough to be a citizen. I mean, if you could ever find a way to explain why there's no record of you being born in any country on the planet.
Sunset smirked.
Or why there's already another Sunset Shimmer already living here?
Twilight tittered, doing that cute little thing where she twirled her hair around with a finger.
Right, details. But I'm really glad you want to learn more about this world, Sunset. Knowing history can certainly be useful in day-to-day life, especially if you're planning on staying.
Her eyes flickered over to Sunset's when that phrase turned into a question toward the end. Sunset blinked and bent up her eyebrow.
Why wouldn't I be? I've stayed this long, haven't I?
The way Twilight's eyes dropped again didn't seem like she'd struck gold with that answer. She let go of Twilight's hand and instead put an arm around her girlfriend and pulled her close.
Hey, if you think I'd leave this world for just anything, you really haven't been paying enough attention, Sparky.
That got a smile out of her, a warm one. The kind of warm apple pies and hot chocolate were made of. The kind that Sunset was made of when she knew she'd impressed her or gotten a little laugh out of her. If her smile was half as warm as Twilight's, that had to be why.
What's this about?
Twilight bit her lip. If it didn't mean shutting her up and giving Twilight an out, Sunset would have gone for a kiss. Twilight squirmed a little, voice lilting towards soprano.
Well...
A buzzing from Sunset's back stopped them both in their tracks. It took a second for Sunset's brain to kick in.
It's the princess. I can check it later. Go on. No,
she said, wiping the air clean like a chalkboard. Sunset knew she'd lost her chance the moment Twilight stepped out of her arms. She also lost her chance for that kiss, too, which at the time decidedly sucked harder.
You should read it. I didn't have much to say anyway.
Sunset grimaced.
Even so, it's kind of rude of me to check my messages in the middle of our date, isn't it? Don't be silly.
Wasting no time, Twilight unzipped Sunset's backpack, took out the book, and handed it to Sunset. By then, she was smiling.
Don't let me stop you talking to the princess. All right,
Sunset said. She took the book and frowned at the cutie mark inscribed in the leather.
Let me just read this quick, and we can move on to that glassy, wingy thing over there. I've got to know the story behind that.
They shared a smile, and Twilight snickered.
The glassy wing thingy it is, then.
That's how Sunset began that message, with a smile tugging at her lips. It didn't take more than a few lines before her smile faltered. Brows drawing together, eyes speeding up. The air shifted from cool to gut-punchingly cold.
Sunset?
Twilight watched her girlfriend's features sink, and her own collapsed immediately.
What's wrong?
Sunset shook her head and flipped to the page, only to find a blank explanation. She looked up at her girlfriend, expression grim.
Something's wrong with Princess Celestia.
Twilight held Sunset by the arm.
What? What is it? Was she kidnapped?
No, she is... Sunset trailed off, her brow crunching together even further.
Princess Twilight says she's... sick.
Cold wind numbed Sunset's knuckles as she yanked the handlebars, leaning left for a high-speed turn. Twilight yelped at her girlfriend's back as the motorcycle growled around the corner. Sunset grit her teeth, steering her bike back to an upright position and opening the throttle. She swerved into the bike lane to avoid smashing into a car, picking up the speed. The softly lit buildings and streetlights that now resembled white lines flew past. Ahead, the setting sun burned searingly bright between rooftops. Meanwhile, Sunset's jacket thrashed around her. On a fall day like this one, the only thing keeping her warm was her girlfriend's body pressed against hers, which was nice, except for Twilight's death hold tightening around her ribcage at the noticeably increasing rate. Sunset didn't know why until it hit her that this was the fastest Twilight had ever let her go. She cut the gas and slowed down as they rounded the last corner to Canterlot High. Even then, she had to brake a bit hard before rolling into the parking lot. After pulling up to a spot, Sunset's boot hit the ground. She cut the engine and the empty evening quiet crept in. Sunset grabbed the chain and padlock from her bike and she went to work tying up her baby. She frowned. With a full school week ahead, who knew what those grubby-handed teenagers would do if they saw an expensive machine like this? She muttered a few of her more colorful swears, some equestrian, some human. When she got back, she'd have to give her an extra polish and make it up to her. Sunset stood up.
That'll have to do it for now.
She looked back to see Twilight fishing her inhaler out of her pocket.
Can you check on her for me when I'm in Equestria? I don't want any parking tickets or boots or anything like that.
Twilight finished taking a puff from her inhaler.
No problem. Come on.
Sunset started a brisk pace around the school. The parking lot was in the back, so the quickest route to the statue without breaking into the school was a sidewalk that wrapped all the way around. Twilight followed after her.
I don't know how long I'll be gone. Do you think I should have packed anything? We don't normally wear clothes, but I promised I'd bring her some human tea, and if I brought over some of this world's medicine... Something caught between a sigh and a growl came out of her mouth. It'll probably not do any good. I can't know what to bring if I don't know what's wrong with her. If Twilight's letter hadn't been so vague, maybe I could have planned for this.
They rounded the corner, following the fence. The broken statue came into sight, practically pink in the glowing sun. Twilight kept the pace behind her, trying to keep up as they closed in on the statue.
Well, what did she say?
Nothing.
She told me she got the word Princess Celestia had fallen gravely ill, and somehow decided it was okay to leave it at that. What in Equestria does that even mean? None of this makes any sense. Sunny,
Twilight said, taking her girlfriend's hand in hers.
You need to stop.
Sunset pulled away, her voice ragged.
But I have to go. I meant you have to stop working yourself up. Oh, you're shaking.
Sunset looked down. Sure enough, her hands were trembling in Twilight's. Now that she had slowed down, she could feel how lightheaded she was. She brought her other jittery hand to her forehead.
You're right,
Sunset said, her fingers sinking into her hairline.
I'm sorry. I just don't know what's going on. Just breathe.
Twilight's voice softened to a whisper, holding Sunset's cheek and stroking it with her thumb.
Come sit with me on the steps?
Sunset nodded. She let Twilight lead the way across the courtyard. When they sat down, Twilight took both of her hands, rubbing circles with her thumbs. Sunset did her best with her at the end of the bargain and tried to remain composed. For her part, Twilight kept her voice soft and sweet.
I'm so sorry, Sunset. I know how much she means to you. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now.
Sunset sighed.
I think that makes the two of us. It's been so long since I've even seen her, and now this? This isn't supposed to happen.
Twilight's brow tightened over her eyes.
You left on good terms last time, didn't you?
Sunset's mouth tensed. The last time they'd seen each other had been emotional. A lot of things needed to be said. Most of them were apologies and I love yous, but some a little less pleasant. Neither of them wanted to fight after being apart so long, but they also knew they needed to clear the air. She hadn't gone back since. She let her eyes drift away. Sure, but I guess I'm just wishing I'd visited more. Twilight cupped her cheek.
She loves you. I know she'll be happy to see you.
A chuckle took Sunset by surprise.
That's what Princess Twilight said before I saw her last time.
Twilight smiled.
The princess is very wise. You should definitely listen to her advice.
They giggled together. Why did she feel like she could take on the world with Twilight around? Sunset hadn't figured out the mechanics of how exactly, but Twilight had always made things feel closer to being okay, even when she couldn't stop falling apart. How could anyone make this even remotely okay? With Twilight by her side, Sunset felt her heart rate slow down as Canterlot High cooled off for the evening, the grass glistening from the sprinklers. The setting sun softened all corners and painted everything a sweeter color. Even the cool air didn't bite as hard as it had. Sunset leaned back, feeling the rough stone steps on her palms. Her smile poked a little higher when she remembered that this was where she'd first seen this world's twilight.
Ready to go?
More ready than before, she said, smiling.
Thanks.
They stood up and Twilight returned the smile in kind.
It was nothing. I know a thing or two about freakouts. Someone even called me the Princess of Freakouts.
Sunset snorted. Glad to have an expert when I need one. They walked across the yard, like they'd done so many times before when they were students. Graduating didn't make it any less familiar, even if it meant that they probably should stop trespassing eventually. They stopped in front of the portal, and Twilight turned towards Sunset.
I'm coming with you.
Sunset's eyes widened.
What? You shouldn't have to go through this alone. You've always been there for me.
The proud little smile that peeked onto her face melted something vital inside Sunset.
This time, I can be there for you. So damn precious.
Sunset shook her head.
That's really sweet, Twi, but not now. There's just too much going on to complicate things anymore. Changing into a new body for the first time is a pretty big adjustment, not to mention all the equestrian magic you'd have to get used to.
A crooked smile found its way onto her face.
When I bring you home to the princess, I want it to be about us. We can tell her then.
Twilight blushed, frowning.
Sunset.
Having Twilight with her would be a dream, one she'd actually had once or twice.
If only there was a way.
Sunset's eyes sparkled.
Hey, I know just the thing.
She reached into her backpack, pulled out her magic journal, and offered it to Twilight.
Take it. That way we can still talk to each other without you having to turn into a pony. I'll just ask Princess Twilight for hers. It's not like she'll be needing it when I'm over there. Sunset, that's perfect!
Twilight took the journal, hugged it to her chest, and smirked.
Clever girl.
I have my moments. Sunset shrugged, giving her backpack to Twilight. She wouldn't really be needing a motorcycle helmet and keys where she was going. Twilight put the journal inside and slung the backpack across her back. Meanwhile, the portal waiting ahead stole Sunset's attention. She sighed and slipped her hands into her jacket pockets.
I guess I should go now.
Taking the collar of Sunset's jacket, Twilight brought her in for a deep, night-long kiss. If she had to be honest, neither of them had been the best kissers when they first started dating. To be entirely fair, none of them had had that many lessons on the subject before. But true to form, both of them were nothing if they weren't determined, and by this point, Sunset would say they pretty much mastered the art of a good kiss. Sunset winced when they pulled apart.
Some way for me to bail on our date, huh? We can finish it when you get back.
Twilight smiled as her arms wrapped around her girlfriend, hand settling on the nape of Sunset's neck. The embrace brought Sunset close to smell the mix of old books, the perfume Twilight borrowed from Rarity for all their dates, and just a hint scent that this was unmistakably Twilight's. Breathing it all in, Sunset relaxed into Twilight's arms.
I love you. I love you too.
After a long, much-needed moment, they separated. Sunset gave her girlfriend one last half-hearted smile before turning away and disappearing through the portal.